Hello and welcome to the Elephant and Bear podcast. This is the show that's dedicated to all things Coventry and Warwickshire and all the interesting stories and interesting people within it. Today, my guest is Steve Tyrell. Steve is a YouTuber who posts regular content about Coventry and canal boats on his channel. Steve, welcome to the show.
Great to be here.
Steve, why don't you introduce yourself to people so they know a bit more about you first of all, and kind of what your background is.
Through and through. I was born on a Toxel Road in Wyking. In fact, I was born in my mother's bedroom. I'm the youngest of three brothers. We had a mixed upbringing. You know, we had a good time, we had a bad time. We were good boys, and we were also naughty boys. You know, as you were when you're kids. But I've lived in Coventry all my life. I spent a couple of years living out of Coventry, but I always seem to come back to Coventry. Coventry's the sort of town, as a kid, I didn't particularly enjoy being around. But as I get older, Coventry's got such more of appeal to me, and as you uncover more history about the town, you find you love the town even more. Saying town, it's a city, but yeah, I mean, I've done several walking videos around Coventry, and I do love my city. And there's so much more to see that I've not seen yet. It's every time I go for a walk around Coventry, if I choose a new area or somewhere where I've not really been around so much as Wyking or Stoke or Musgrave, you always find something new. There's always something new that grabs your attention and stands out to you, and you think, God, I've never seen that before. You know, I mean, little things like Coat of Arms Bridge Road down by the Memorial Park. I think I was 35 years old when I realised that was there, you know, and I was driving down in my car and I was like, oh, God, look at that. You know, Coat of Arms Bridge Road, and there's a bridge with the coat of arms on it. Silly things, but yeah, I love my town, and I'm happy to promote my town to anybody who wants to listen, you know, so yeah, through YouTube or through things like this, it's worth doing.
Yeah, fantastic. And obviously, you know, I first come across you when you did a YouTube video walking the length of the River Sow on there. What were some of the things that you learned or you found out as you went through that journey? Lots
of stuff, actually. It's a river I've grown up with since I was a kid. So some of my earliest, because I was a Wyking lad, and I lived by Culloden School, and the river runs through Culloden School. And I spent most of my childhood playing in the river, fishing in it, you know, messing about it with my mates. Broke swings across, you know, tied to trees across the river by bridges and stuff. You know, we had such good fun as a kids. But it's a river I've not really investigated apart from my local area. So when COVID came in and the restrictions, we spent all that time locked down, not being able to go out. I decided, right, that's it. I did a lot of walking with the dog when I was during lockdown, keep fit and all that sort of stuff. So I decided, right, I'm going to walk the whole river. It took me 2 days. The first day, I think I did something like 16, 17 miles. And that was from where it joins the River Avon at Stoneleigh, back into Coventry, where I live at by Binley Fire Station. I live not far from Binley Fire Station now. So that was my first walk. And the second walk, I think, was, I think the first walk was something like 12 miles, and the second walk was 16 miles or something. And the second walk took me all the way to Bedworth, where the river ends, where it joins. There's like a lake at the back of Bedworth. I can't remember the name of it now, but that's the overflow from the lake is the start of the River Sow. And for the first half a mile or so, the river runs under a culvert under all the houses. And it was great, just following the river all the way back through and under the motorway and under the M6, and you know it was a great walk. And even
it's
no, it's right. I was just going to say, even the little woodlands you find on the way, like the little spinners and that the river flows through, that it's new environments that you wouldn't normally associate or go round. And there's a path you can actually follow the river, the Sow Valley, all the way back, and there's a path all the way through, and it is an amazing walk. You know, even if you just do a short section of it, there's some lovely scenes to see. You know, and there's always something new around the corner. You think, I've not seen that before, or I've not seen this before. You know, and it is great, and it always keeps my. And even if I walked it again now, even though I've walked it before, you'd still find something new and interesting, something different, you know. So yeah, I'd recommend the River South to anybody as a walk. It's great.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I've walked parts of it. I do need to kind of try and do all of it at some point, because, you know, like I say, from Bedworth to Stoneleigh, he cuts across all of Coventry and, you know, all of the
and
bits.
He goes through some of the nicest areas of Coventry, or, you know, Stoneleigh and all that sort of areas, some of the really nice areas around Baggington, and then you go through some of the really quite deprived areas like Woodend and that, you know. So you go from being in such a beautiful environment to being in, I wouldn't say a bad environment or a rough environment, but you go from it being extremely clean and tidy to, you know, lots of litter and stuff like that, you know, which is a bit of a bugbear of mine. But unfortunately, living in places like Coventry or Birmingham or London, you're always going to get litter. I don't particularly like it. Me and my partner, we do litter picks quite regularly, but yeah, it's just one thing I don't like. But as I say, it's part of living in a town. You're always going to get it, you know. So, but you do go from some really pretty scenes to some quite, you know, shopping trolleys, you know, wrapped up in the river and stuff. It's just, yeah, that's part of it. It's all part of the walk.
And obviously you're linked in, you know, obviously very strongly with the canals. You do a lot of kind of canal boat videos as well, and I guess you see that on the canals as well, where you've got the picturesque parts of the canals, but you then also got the industrial heritage of the canals as well.
The thing is, you've got to take the rough side with the canals with the smooth, the same as the river. The canal was, of its time, the M6 and the M1 and the motorways. So it was never built as a place for people to go walking or to go cycling or to go pleasure boating or anything like that. The canals were built for commercial use, and that was it. Yeah. So you're always going to get. So people say, "Oh, you go through Birmingham," and I've heard people say about the canals in Birmingham, "Oh, the canals are lovely, but why does it have to go through all the factories?" Because that's what the canals are built for. You know, look at your history of the canal. They were built to service factories. Yeah. That's all they were built for. I mean, Coventry I think Coventry was one of the first canals to be built. I think they had one in Manchester, and then Coventry came along, and Coventry was one of the earliest canals. And it was only built because coal mines in the area, you know, and the industry that was going on in Coventry with the car manufacturing and stuff and all that sort of stuff, and everything that was going on before the car manufacturing. It was all done for coal. I mean, Bedworth and Nuneaton was such a big coal producers. They had to move the coal around in such massive numbers to feed Coventry and other towns that the canals were built through Coventry just to service it.
Yeah, yeah. I was watching a video about Regent's Canal in London the other day, and you know, you see what it's become now. And obviously, you know, people are walking down it. It's all kind of, you know, passenger traffic and tourism and stuff. But like you say, you know, 200 years ago when these things were being, you know, built, you know, purely for commercial reasons, there wasn't a, you know, tourism. Probably wasn't even a word 200 years ago, was it?
On some of the memoirs of some of the boatmen. Back from even like the turn of the century, like just before the First World War and between the two World Wars as well. Coventry and the Coventry Canal was black. The water was black, you know, and everything around the canal was black because it was all coal dust. Everything was just, you know, and that's how it was. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, everyone used to have a coal fire when I was a kid. You know, I mean, not that I'm that old. I mean, I was only born in 1970, but, you know, everyone used to have coal fires. That's just how it was because there was so much coal in the area that people burnt coal to keep warm, you know, and that's exactly what we did, you know. And it's another area like Red Lane in Coventry. That used to be, it was called Red Lane because there was a quarry there. And when they brought the clay out, it got dusty and the lane was red. So they called it Red Lane, simple as that, you know. And they say that the stone or the clay, the bricks that the clay were built from Red Lane, built half of Birmingham. And the coal came in to burn the bricks on the canal, and the bricks went back out on the canal all the way to Birmingham. And that's what built half of Birmingham was the clay out of Red Lane, out the pits at Red Lane. You know, so yeah, canals. Such a wide things that were built and made there, you know. And it's all Coventry, you know. So going back to Red Lane again, I know we were chatting before we started recording this. But Red Lane, at one stage, they used to make the biggest guns in the world in Red Lane. the biggest naval guns. So you'd have everything from 18 to 20 odd inch guns being made in the factory off Red Lane. And when they first built the factory, it was the biggest open span factory in Europe. So the biggest single open span factory in Europe. And that's where they used to forge the guns and melt the metal and all that sort of stuff. They'd have raw metal come in, they'd melt it down, they'd cast the guns, they'd bore them out, they'd rifle them and all sorts, And these guns are weighing, 50, 100 tons. And all the raw produce would come in on the canal. And because the guns were massively heavy, they couldn't take them out in the canal. So the factory had its own railway track. So they used to take the guns out by train, and that's how they used to take them out. But they were that's one of the biggest places that built naval guns for England. Early First World War and between the wars and for the Second World War as well. So yeah.
Yeah, and obviously we were chatting before, weren't we, in terms of Coventry and kind of the industry, and then obviously then how that then kind of impacted in terms of kind of the bombings and stuff, and why Coventry was such a target in World War II in particular. From there, Steve. I mean, obviously it's kind of both before our times, but do you have any kind of memories or recollections from family members around that time?
Oh yeah, the old my ex-partners, my ex-wife's parents, they both lived through the war. They were very young, obviously, in the war, but my ex-wife's mother, her father was killed in the war, and during the war, when there was an air raid, I went out to the air raid shelter, or you hid under the stairs. And it just so happened that this night, her mother's family, they all hid under the stairs, and the house got bombed. And obviously they knew that they could hear the bombs coming, they could hear the bombs dropping. Her dad threw himself over the daughter, and the dad died, and the daughter lived because he'd thrown himself over the top of her to protect her, from the house collapsing. So, but yeah, all sorts of stuff like that. But I mean, even going back to industrial side of the war, I think Coventry had such a massive industry, from like Elvis cars and all that sort of stuff, and they were all making stuff for the war. Everything. The whole of Coventry was one big industrial estate at one time. There were so many things going on. Yeah. Coombe Abbey. I don't know if you remember. You guys know Coombe Abbey. Well, during the war, they had to drain Coombe Abbey Lake because the Coombe Abbey Lake is pointed. It's like it's shaped like an arrow, and the point of the arrow points towards Coventry city centre. So the German planes used to come over, line up with the lake at Coombe Abbey, and they knew exactly where they were going. Because even in the middle of the night, you can still see the lake. It shines like a beacon. You need a bit of moonlight, and it will shine, and the lake will shine at night. And so they had to drain the lake because they knew the lake would point towards the city centre. And they always used to things like the canals as well. The German bombers used to follow the canals because they knew the canals used to go into the city centres as well. So they'd pick up the rivers and the canals, and they'd follow that into the city centre. And then they'd use that to navigate into like Coventry and bomb Coventry and stuff like that. The River Sherborne, you can walk down there now. And if you go down the back of where the waste refuge place is now, the tip, where you take your rubbish. If you follow the River Stour down the back there, there's like an old concrete dam that there's like with a big guillotine gate. And that was put there. I think there was something like 5 or 6 of those built on the River Sherborne during the war. And the idea was they'd close these gates in the river and dam the river off so that the river level rose up and made it higher. And then when the city was bombed, the fire service would have something to use as water. So they'd dam the river up and they'd make the river quite deep, and they'd have thousands and thousands of gallons of water to use to put the fires out. So there is plenty of history going on from back the war, and we were chatting earlier as well about this. You go down the street in Coventry and all the houses are the same. And then you'll get 5 or 6 houses in a row that are different to the rest of the street. And that's the reason for that is that chances are during the war, if, they were bombed, so that they'd rebuild after the war because they were built in slightly different style.
Yeah.
So there's Coventry and the history. There's so much history about that. Because also before the war, Coventry, if you all know Spon Street and places like that, and the Bailey Lane in Coventry, we were saying earlier, the whole of Coventry would have been like that at one stage. It was such an old city, such a medieval city.
Yeah,
it's one of the oldest cities in England. Coventry is, and it had all been old-fashioned, and then obviously during the war, it was virtually flattened. So yeah, it's all good.
Yeah, I know you've also talked about in the city. It used to be a gated city, and you can still see some of the gates around Coventry city centre today as well. Is from kind of medieval times and before up until over the last kind of 70, 80 years. There's so much history.
And you can still see
Coventry, which even as
you can still see part of the Coventry Wall as well. Part of the wall still exists, either as a fully built wall. There is a short section not far from the canal basin that's still fully built, and then at the bottom of Sky Blue Way, where it goes up onto the ring road, under the slip road for the ring road, there's parts of the wall still there as well. And like you say, the gates are still there. Some of the gates are still there, but that's where the saying "Centre Coventry" comes from, because at one stage, with Coventry being a walled city, it was it's where they sent a lot of the political prisoners. So if you were sent to Coventry, because you could be kept in the walled city and kept an eye on and looked after, almost like a prison, and that's where the saying came from. You were sent to Coventry, so nobody would talk to you because you was a political prisoner, and people weren't allowed to talk to you. You were sent to Coventry as a prisoner, and that's where the saying, being sent to Coventry comes from. Yeah. All good history.
Yeah, fantastic. And obviously, in terms of Coventry, we've talked about the history of Coventry and some of the features of Coventry. Is there a particular Coventrian that springs to mind that you'd kind of immediately associate with Coventry, or particularly you've got a particular fondness to?
One that does stand out a fair bit, only because I love two-tone music. I love the specials and the selector and that sort of stuff. And I went to school with his son, and I also went to Cubs with his son as well. And that was Pete Waterman. Nice little country chap, used to be a DJ and did clubs uptown. Yeah. I think he also had a record shop at one stage. I might be wrong. I might have just kind of made that up in my head, but I'm sure he had a record shop. But yeah, he's an old Coventry, and because I'm a bit of a railway geek and all that sort of stuff, he's into his trains as well. Yeah, so Pete Waterman for me. There's no end of other ex-Coventrians you could put a flag on and say, this guy's special, or this guy's this, or this guy's that. But for me, because I love the music so much, it'd be definitely Pete Waterman. He's one of the guys I would look up to. He's come from very meagre. He was brought up in quite a down area of Coventry, and he's made it to be, a very rich, popular, famous man. So he's made his way up the ladder and done what everyone wants to do, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. And he's always someone, whenever I've seen interviews with him, who's always been kind of proud of his Coventry heritage as well. He's never kind of shied away from that either. And like you say, he's very much into his trains, his model trains, and all of these different types of things. And he is who he is. He takes pride in that as well, which is always something which definitely is a proud to be admired.
Yeah, like you say, he's never afraid to say, I'm from Coventry. And also, he's never afraid to say, he had a rough upbringing. He was, living in a rough area. But I suppose all of Coventry is a bit of a rough area at one stage, because Coventry's had its checkered past, same as every other town, But it's all good.
Is there anything that you miss from Coventry's past, Steve?
Not that I can put my finger on as such. The one thing I do, memories from when you was a kid. My brother used to take me to the cinema in town. We used to go, and whenever there was a new Bond film out, me and my brother used to go. He used to take me on the bus, and we'd get some popcorn or whatever and go and watch the new Bond film. In fact, the three of us used to go, me and my two brothers, we used to go and watch the Bond film. That's one thing I do miss, is things like that, going into town for special occasions, because you never went to town as a kid unless, nowadays kids, they go to town every day, every Saturday or every Sunday or every day of the week, they'll go into town and hang out. We never did that as a kid, Going into town was always a special event, So going into town and going to the old picture houses, the old theatres, the old Odeon and the ABC and all that sort of stuff. It was great to go into town and watch the Bond films, and you go.
Yeah, there used to be so many cinemas in Coventry, didn't there, as well, in the city centre?
Right, there used to be. There was a couple down Fossil Road, and there was one up at Tile Hill as well on the junction there of Fatty Island. That used to be a cinema as well at one stage. There was loads around. You it makes you wonder how they made so much money. But I suppose back in the day, not many people had television, so once a week they'd go out to the pictures or whatever. So yeah.
Please excuse this brief interruption. This podcast is made possible by Plan with Neil. Plan with Neil is an independent financial advisor from Coventry, helping people improve their financial well-being by supporting them with retirement planning, life insurance, and much more. Please check out the website planwithneil.com and book a free discovery session today. Now, back to the podcast. Yeah, and films used to be on for a lot longer those times, didn't they? Because you wasn't going to be on, couldn't get it on DVD 3 months later or on Netflix 6 months later, and so people would go back and watch the same film over and over again at the cinema.
6 months, wouldn't they? You know what I mean? They'd be on for ages and ages. They get their money's worth out of it, And I suppose while people were still watching it and get paying to go and see it, they'd keep it, and it weren't until that film stopped getting the attendance that they then gets under the filming and have something else on, So. But yeah, that's. I do miss the old cinemas. I mean, you can still go to the showcase up by the M6, but it just doesn't quite have the same. It's not quite the same as going to town and getting the bus ride into town. It being a big adventure when you was a kid. It's just not quite there.
Yeah, it's a very kind of American sanitized experience going into the cinema these days compared to what it would be in the past. We were talking before the call, Steve, about Coventry and kind of how much things have changed in Coventry. What are your thoughts in terms of what's happened to Coventry over the last maybe 5-10 years with the city of culture and the explosion in the city centre over that?
I think the city of culture. Us being awarded the City of Culture is probably in the last 20 years the one thing that is going to massively change the city for the better. I know we've had various different things over the past 10 or so years that they've tried to push Coventry, but City of Culture is the one that's going to make Coventry stand out on the map, I think. Because up until, 10 years ago, Coventry hadn't changed much at all. Since when I was a kid, Coventry hadn't changed much. Everything was pretty much the same as it was 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago. And it's only been in the last 10, 15 years that Coventry's really starting to change and to develop. When I was a kid, I always remember Coventry being very grey, very concrete, very plain, very drab, but especially in the city centre sort of area. I mean, even though I have very fond memories of going, to the city centre as a kid, it was always very grey, very drab. But you go in there now, and even though it's still the same buildings, or they're basically the same buildings, it just seems to be a lot more vibrant now. There's a lot more different languages spoken in Coventry now as well. You go around town now, you can hear Polish, you can hear Czech, you can hear Pakistani, you can hear everything, every language you want to think of, Chinese, all sorts. And it's amazing to sit. I mean, I like Starbucks in Coventry, just off Cathedral Square, opposite Lady Godiva. I like to sit there and have a cup of coffee and people watch for an hour or so. And it's amazing the different cultures you see and the different voices and, the languages and that. It really is amazing how Coventry's changed. But yeah, I think Coventry's so much better now. And as I say, in the last 10 years, things are changing, things are getting better. The university's building a lot more buildings, which is changing the face of the city. Whether that's for the better or for the worst, we'll see in a few years' time. But it's definitely changing. I mean, even like around the station, that's changing a great deal.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think that kind of that interweaving of definitely kind of the Coventry train station. So I was watching a video you did a while back, and you can see the Coventry station, the new railway station being built, and even just in the last few months, that's exploded into a kind of a wall of red and grey and stuff that's kind of been created. And there's obviously been so many more murals as well that have been put up around Coventry over the last year or so with the city.
Yeah, I mean, seeing all the different murals go up is brilliant. The one that particularly stands out for me is at the bus Palmetto. They got there's a mural on the doorway, the two-tone one, it all done in tiles and stuff. That's amazing. That really is amazing. So I do like that. And just the whole city centre is like you go down the back of the old cathedral now, and you got the old medieval buildings underneath that they've got covered up. I can't remember what they called now? The Priory. Yeah, if you go and have a look at the old Priory bit around there, that's some of the history there is absolutely fabulous. And then the buildings they've built up around it, it's really good. Coventry's moving up, and it's about time that Coventry has changed, because it's been stagnant for years, and I think the way Coventry's moving now, I may not necessarily agree with some of the buildings that are going up, but it's definitely moving forward for the better, and I think that's what Coventry needs. It needs that little bit of a kick up the arse just to push it forward into the next, into the next generation, and say, right, we're Coventry, we're this, we're that. We're the best university for this. We're the best university for that. We're the best football team or whatever. Or we're the best rugby team. I think Coventry is definitely changing, and changing for the better. I think it's looking a lot nicer than it ever was.
Yeah, and I think that where it's doing better now than it had done in the past is it's kind of interweaving some of the new things with some of the historical things. So, for example, at the old cathedral, they're putting on events at the old cathedral, which is just a fantastic place to visit in the middle of the day. But you go to a concert at night there, and it's just fantastic.
They have the street food in there as well, don't they?
Whereas in the past, it would have been perhaps
they have the street food and all that sort of stuff in there.
Yeah.
And I think that's absolutely brilliant, because I love the old Coventry Cathedral anyway, because it's such a lovely, peaceful place. But then to also utilise it for things like, say, like for the odd concert here and there, they have the outdoor cinema there as well, and the street food. I think that's a great idea, just to bring local people into the city and bring into the cathedral. And because I wonder how many people are out there that live in Coventry, that have lived in Coventry all their life, have never set foot inside the old cathedral. And I'm gonna put my neck out there and say, I bet there's 40% of the people living in Coventry have never been in the old cathedral. And it's such a lovely place. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah,
exactly. And just you don't have to be kind of religious to visit it. You just go in there. You just observe the fact that this was bombed, and the tears that must have been shed at that place. But it was such a peaceful place as it is right now. It's fantastic.
Can you imagine how? Although it's a church, it's a cathedral, and now it's only a ruins. Do you imagine how beautiful that must have been when it was all in its glory, and just before the war and all that sort of stuff? I've seen photos of it, and photos never do it justice. But it must have been absolutely stunning with all the stained glass, and even just for putting the religious part of it aside, just for the architectural, and the art that goes on. Let's face it, stained glass is art, isn't it? You look at the stained glass. It must have been amazing.
Yeah,
it must have been absolutely stunning just to go and view it. So unfortunately, that's sort of been denied us. But we've got the new cathedral now, So and that's also a stunning building.
Yeah,
not my cup of tea, I must admit, but you can't deny the fact it's an absolutely stunning building. And you've only got to sit there and for half an hour and have a look around and look at the tapestry and the modern stained glass windows and the modern etching in the glass. It's a stunning building, it all in its own accord, So just slightly modern. Yeah,
no, definitely. Steve, I think I could probably speak to you for hours.
I can chat for hours. That's one thing you know about me.
Another podcast about a specific topic.
I can chat rubbish for hours. Trust me.
What I want to do now, though, is ask you some kind of quick fire questions about Coventry. So, first of all, if you had to pick between the Memorial Park or Combe Abbey, which one would you pick?
I've got great memories of Combe Abbey from when I was a 6-year-old, disappearing off on my brother's bike to Combe Abbey on my own when I was about 6 or 7 years old. And my dad knowing exactly where I was, and he used to come up in his car and he'd put the bike in the back of the car and come and find me in the kids' play area, because that's exactly where I'd be, in the kids' play area. I did that a few times when I was a kid. 6, 7 years old, making my own way to Combe Abbey. Stealing my brother's bike.
Yeah. obviously you're on the same side of Coventry as me, and obviously Coombe Abbey, it's so remote, but it's actually very accessible, isn't it? If you want to walk there or cycle
and in
to
fact,
it. So
if you're Wyken or Walsgrave, the quickest way is probably through the back of Walsgrave as well, because that's the way I used to go to it, and then cut across the farmer's field.
Yeah.
Well, now there's a footpath across the farmer's field to Coombe Abbey, but when I was a kid, there wasn't. And there was quite a few times I got chased by the farmer across the field because, we were in there trying to get to the Coombe Abbey. He didn't want us cutting across, but obviously now there's a footpath.
Yeah.
So, great memories of being a kid down there.
Yeah. I'm sure many people have done that walk around from the back of Walsgrave to Coombe Abbey. What about into the city centre? West Orchard or Cathedral Lanes?
I'm not a shopping person. To be fair, I've not been in either for about 5 years because I say I'm not a shopping person. But if I had to pick one, I'd probably say West Orchard, only because it's more in the city centre. It's a little bit bigger and there's probably better shops there. No, I don't mean better shops. I mean like the bigger shops, like record shops and that. So I suppose West Orchard. Yeah,
perfect. And is there a particular shopping high street that you have fond memories of in the past, whether it's like Ball Hill or Jubilee Crescent? Is there any kind of particular area that's Coventry that kind of springs to mind?
If ever I went to buy a record or anything like that, I'd go to Woolies at Ball Hill, Woolworths at Ball Hill. Used to go there, get me records, buy me singles and me albums and that sort of stuff. Because as I was saying earlier, going to town was such a big thing because you'd go to Ball Hill. If you wanted some stuff like clothes or whatever, you get from Ball Hill. And going there on a Wednesday afternoon with my mum as well, my grandma and my aunties and that, and stopping at the Rosebud Cafe and having a cup of coffee. My mum used to go and buy knitting and all that, Wolford knitting and stuff, and we'd sit there for an hour with my aunties and my grandma and that, and having a cup of coffee and chatting. It was, so Ball Hill, that'd be the one place I always used to go to.
Ball Hill used to be a place where you could almost get anything that you wanted there, because you had the Woolworths there, and what been a quick save, or the banks and everything there.
And you only had to cut up.
You could do there.
You only had to go up Clay Lane as well, and you got clothes shops at Clay Lane. You got Cat Blue and all that sort of stuff that used to be up Clay Lane. So if you ever wanted school trousers, your mum used to drag you up Cat Blue up Clay Lane and get your school trousers and that from there, like, you know what I mean? So gosh, used to hate that, being dragged up there for new school clothes. Used to hate new school clothes. So
and obviously this one might be more of a difficult one for you with your links to the water, but the River Sow or the Coventry Canal, which would you
that's not
choose?
Fair. That's not fair. You've done that on purpose. The River Sow, it's got to be, because I was saying earlier, the River Sow has been in my blood since I was knee high to a grasshopper. And my first memories of me and my mates hanging around on the rope swings down by Culloden Bridge, down the school there, and building dens in the corners of the stream. In the river, there'd be like a little bit of an overbit. We'd build dens in there and all sorts. But I've spent all my life living around and walking the River Sow and playing. I've even peed in it several times. You know what I mean? It's just it was my go-to place as a kid. If ever wanted to get away where it was peaceful and quiet and be on my own and have a little cry to myself or whatever, it was the River Sow. If ever went out with my mates to have a laugh and get pissed, on a Sunday or Saturday night, like, with my mates, it was down the River Sow. If when you had your first crafty fag when you was like 14, 15 or whatever, mine, it was down the River Sow. So the River Sow has flowed through my life, so it's going to have to be the River Sow. And that's the reason why I did the walk and did the video for the walk, because I've lived on it. My best friend died in the River Sow when we were 8 years old. Him and another friend of mine went down there to play, and one of my friends fell in. The lad who died pulled him out and slipped in himself and then couldn't get out, and then he passed away. He drowned and passed away. They found his body 6 days later at the bridge down by Binley Fire Station. So, still brings a tear to my eye now. Sad old sod. But so the river's got a lot of history in my life. It's been part of my life since I've been born.
Yeah, kind of woven through your life and through kind of many people in Coventry's lives, really, even if it's just a small part of it, of the River Sal. Obviously, you've done a whole lot in terms of your YouTube video, which I recommend everyone have a look at from that side. But yeah, no, definitely kind of a fantastic part of the city. Thinking about some of the events that go on in Coventry, obviously two of the bigger ones are the Coventry Moto Fest and the Godiva Festival. Do you have a particular preference on which one you prefer out of those two?
I love the Godiva Festival, but they've started charging for it now. So I'm a bit... so I'm going to have to say the Moto Fest. 2 years ago, I'd have said 100% Godiva Festival, but now they've started charging for it. I'm a little bit like, I understand they've got to make money and all that sort of stuff, but do they have to make money? It was always done as a freebie for the city and for the people of the city. I suppose they have to pay for the security and all that sort of stuff now, but I still preferred it when it was free. So as the Motorfest is still free, I'm going to say, and me being a tight-fisted old git, I'm going to say the Motorfest.
Yeah. I think the great thing about the Moto Fest is it's something which is, you can get music festivals anywhere, but the Moto Fest is something which is particularly Coventry, Coventry themed, and all the stuff that goes on the ring road,
especially with the city having such history with the motor vehicle as well. I mean, Daimler being the first, making the first production car in Coventry. I think there was at one stage. I think we were chatting earlier. There's something between 15 and 20, maybe even more, car manufacturers in Coventry itself at one stage. So I mean, Coventry. I suppose you could. I don't know if I said this earlier. You could say Coventry was England's Motown in more ways than one, because you got all the motor industry, same as Detroit, and then you also had two-tone, where obviously Motown had Motown music, we had two-tone. So Coventry was England's Motown at one stage, so with all the car industries and the music, and that's the one thing I'd push for Coventry as an advert is the music, so.
Yeah, no, definitely. With all of that, I think that's probably all we've got time for on today's podcast, Steve. Like I said, I think I'm going to have to kind of get you on for another podcast, probably around a specific topic in the future, because we could spend so much just on kind of one topic. But in terms of people finding out more about yourself and your channel, what's the channel?
So if they go onto YouTube and just search for Narrowboat Precious Jet, that'll take them to me, So that's the name of my channel, is Narrowboat Precious Jet.
Perfect. Thank you for coming on today. Thank you to all the listeners that have been listening. As you can see, I'm new to this.
Thank you for having me. It's been
great talking to you.
It's been an absolute pleasure being here. Thank you for inviting me. I've really enjoyed it. There's like I said, there's one thing I can do is talk rubbish for England. So it's if you ever want me back, I'm more than happy to come back. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, perfect. Well, thank you very much.
And, all right, cheers. Thank you.
See you soon.